This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by 7 amazing individuals. Greg Ross, Bill Illuminati, Allison Cook, Dr. O in T-Burg, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Soraya.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have Mike and Tony from the Strange Air podcast and Trap Street podcasts. Hi, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Soraya. Thank you for having us.
I don't remember how I found Strange Air, but somewhere along the line I found Strange Air. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And you guys made a kick-ass podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We remember we have Google alerts set up for the Strange Air show and Trap Street. And we got an alert about, where does the road go? And we listened in to you and your I think you had 2 other people with you talking about the show. And you were the first person to really come out that publicly and champion the show. So thank you.
I think I recommended it a few weeks prior. And then I was like, we need to do a show on this thing that they put in the show because this is real and interesting.
It was one of the things we tried to do with the show was kind of find interesting phenomenon, I guess, for lack of a better word, of things that are actually real, and then try and put that around the show and see what we could use that was actually real. And if you go to the website, there's actually, points to a lot of the stuff that we actually talk about is extras that people can read and say, oh, that's actually a real thing,
And what is the website?
I love the use of the word real by my partner.
Right, yeah.
One of my favorite things is that the word real is very debatable.
That's true.
Well, all of reality is not real, so.
Right. Hey, that's what Neo learned.
Exactly. Yes. What's the website?
It is Strange Air Podcast, and there's extras on that one. And then there's also one Trap Street Podcast. We have a few things up there, too, for extra reading, extracurricular.
So I started listening to Strange Air, I think, after you finished it.
Okay.
So I got to binge the whole thing, which made me very happy.
Good.
I just got to listen straight through because I think you did 2 seasons?
Yes.
We did, 2 seasons, 20 episodes total.
And Trap Street, my only complaint is the episodes are too short. and because they're only coming out now, like I put an episode on, I'm all excited, and then it ends, and I'm like, oh, that's all I have. Okay, well.
Soraya, I have several dear friends who have told me, I'm sure it's good. We're going to wait until the whole season's done because 15, 20 minutes an episode. And the reason they're shorter is basically for our sanity. Podcasting is absolutely fantastic, but it's not my primary source of income. So Strange Air was a massive undertaking during the pandemic shutdown. So we wanted to kind of simplify and really make what we do better. And we learned a lot on Strange Air, and we're applying those rules to this show. And I'm talking about rules about writing and how to mix audio and how to get great music and this sort of thing. So yes, they're short. It's intentional. I know. You'll have more soon. I promise.
Oh, I'm sure. And I get excited every time a new one pops in my podcast addict.
Thank you.
It's one of the shows I look forward to because I have no idea where you're going with this.
Good. That's the point.
Yes, and that's what I like. Again, the same with Strange Air. I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that, and like when you got done, I'm like, okay, that's not what I was guessing, but it works.
Yeah, well, that's the fun thing. Just so you know, like with Trap Street, we finished all 3 seasons, every single script before we recorded one single word.
Oh, wow.
Because we wanted it all laid out. It's very hard to tell a story if you don't know where the story is going.
Yes.
We played it a little looser with Strange Air because it was a new thing for us. But with Trap Street, we wrote 3 seasons, beginning, middle, and end, very definitive ending, and I think it's going to flow really nicely.
Cool. All right. And what episode are you up to now as we're recording this?
We just dropped episode 8.
Okay.
And that's the end of the first season. So we got a little bit of a break coming up for 8 weeks or so, and then we'll start dropping season 2.
Oh, yeah, 3 seasons, 8 episodes per season, short breaks so nobody complains. Because man, when listeners get, I mean, you're right, Soraya. When listeners get hooked on a show, we get the emails.
Yeah.
And we get the written reviews on Apple and other platforms, and people are vocal, and I like that because it means they really like it and they're eager. So it's a wonderful validation.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The I with a lot of television shows, I'll wait till an entire season comes out before I'll even start them. But even then, sometimes they take 2 years before they continue. And by the time 2 years have passed, I'm going, I don't even remember how this ended last season. Like, what are you doing? And
I was a huge Game of Thrones fan, and those waits were terminal.
Yeah.
And then what happened is, season 4 would start, and you have to sort of review the previous seasons because it's such a dense show. I'm talking about Game of Thrones, not mine.
Yeah.
And just so you can catch up. So yeah, I get that, and there's just so much content out there.
Yeah. Yeah, there really is. And
even in this genre, in podcasting, when I got into this, I was strictly a listener back in the day. I think the first show I got hooked on, oddly enough, had a paranormal angle. It was the Black Tapes. Do you know that one?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think I liked Tanis a little more than the Black Tapes, but yeah. Mm-hmm. I definitely like the Black Tapes.
Yeah, well, Tanis came later, and so did Rabbits, and they're all great shows. I love Terry Miles. I consider Terry Miles my nemesis, simply because he's so good and he's where I want to be. So he's my Moriarty, But
here's the thing. As you guys said, you have the whole story planned out, whereas with both Tanis and Black Tapes, I don't think they knew where they were going.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think, too, for us is we definitely wanted to have a definitive beginning, middle, and end, because there's a lot of shows that we've listened to that you can tell they weren't quite sure if they were going to do a second season, and then they cobbled together a story, and then it got popular, and then they're like, well, let's do a 3rd season and a 4th season. And so now there's either no ending in sight, or they've lost the complete crux of the story, and they have no idea where they're going. But, I think for us, we just said, no, we want to have a whole thing, and if it's, hugely popular, great, that's it. This is all you get.
Right. Then you do another podcast.
Sure.
I assume Strange Air was inspired from things like Art Bell.
Oh, listen, I'm from New York, and I moved out here in the 90s, and I remember Coast to Coast AM. It was in LA. It was AM 640. And if your listeners, I'm sure your listeners are aware, but if they're not, there was a guy named Art Bell who hosted a call-in show on the radio, on AM radio. And all his topics were supernatural, paranormal, and anything goes. Yeah. And the wonderful thing for me, listening as someone who had just moved to a city where he knew no one, was it was familiar. It was 5 days a week, 10 o'clock at night till 2 a.m. And it always opened with broadcasting from the high desert. Yeah. And I was like, what the hell is the high desert? Isn't desert low? What is this? It sounds mysterious. And Soraya, I got so hooked on Art Bell, and he's no longer with us, but the show continues. It's hosted by a gentleman named George Noory. Mm-hmm. And I loved Art Bell. And the great thing about Art Bell, which we sort of borrowed for the character in Strange Air, who is also a radio host, is that Art Bell was not judgy. If somebody called up talking about Bigfoot or his experience with UFOs, Art Bell never laughed. Mm-hmm. He never poked fun. He was never like, wink, wink, you're dumb.
Right.
He listened. He actually engaged these people in conversation, and it was fascinating.
There were probably some times he should have questioned, but the whole Heaven's Gate thing didn't go well.
No.
There you go.
Yeah,
right.
That may have been a misstep.
But the open-mindedness is very much appreciated. And I always feel like when people come to me with stories, I'd rather believe someone who's lying than not believe someone who's telling the truth. Because, the people who are telling the truth sometimes are very, sometimes traumatized by this stuff. Whatever the actual source of what they experienced was, it had an effect on them. And they don't necessarily want to talk about it, but they feel like I need to share this with someone who may understand. And so, okay, so if you're lying, so what? It doesn't really, affect me. You're just a jerk and made something up. But,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think empathy is what, obviously people are looking for, but also the idea that, as one of the things that we wanted to express was what do you believe? I don't care what anybody believes as long as you believe it and your beliefs are true and sincere.
Yeah.
I don't have to necessarily believe what you believe, but if this set of facts is true to you and you truly believe it and it's in your heart, then great. If that helps you get through the day, fine. That's what you need. Amazing.
Right. I mean, we all live different lives with different experiences, different different everything, different perceptions, different level of senses, life experiences, or even twins don't have the exact same things going on. So, it is a whole mixed bag of things that makes all of us very, very different.
The idea of cloning somebody
and
that would never be the same person.
Right.
And that's the idea behind Strange Air. I mean, for those of who are listening who don't know, I'll give you the quick outline very quickly. Is 10 years ago, there was an Art Bell type character on the radio named Malcolm Smith. And he had a call-in show that became very popular. He took calls about the paranormal and about supernatural and this sort of thing. And one night in the booth, alone, by himself, he vanished. Literally, he was there one moment, and then he was gone. 10 years go by, no one has ever figured out what happened. And the show begins with his daughter, who is a film school grad, doing a documentary on her father's disappearance. Her name is Chase. And Chase is just trying to find the truth. And one of the things she's always asking, to the point you guys are making, is, what do you believe happened? What do you believe? What do you believe? And that's one of the anchors of Strange Air, is this young woman finding out what different people believe about this incident that defined her life. And I love that. And that, to me, I mean, I'm not speaking for Mike, speaking for myself. I grew up on the X-Files. I'm assuming you know the show, Soraya?
Of course.
Yeah, it's an iconic show in this world. Yeah. And if you remember, in Mulder's office, he has a poster of a UFO, and there's some writing on the poster. Right. What does it say?
I want to believe.
Exactly, and that's the key. It doesn't say I believe. It says I want to believe, and that's how I define myself, and that's how I define the character of Chase in Strange Air.
Okay. It's you definitely create a very interesting mystery with no obvious direction to where the solution's going to be, and you narrow it down as it goes to something that's actually a real thing, and then you just kind of tack on your own interpretation of it.
Right. Yeah. And the response has been 50-50. Luckily, everyone seems to love the show. Yeah. As far as the resolution, which we obviously shouldn't discuss, it's 50-50. The people who love it they're blown away by it, because usually they'll go back, they'll re-listen to the show and go, oh, they set this up. It's not random. This has been set up for many, many episodes. Oh, and the people who don't like the ending, God bless them, their emails are the funnest ones to read.
Yeah, that is the truth.
And Mike and I have we have no ego. Everybody likes what they like. It's all good. There you go.
It was a solid ending. At first I'm like, how do I feel about this? I'm like, no, this was good. It all makes sense. It works. Like, I'm not sure if that's what I would have chosen, but then I'm thinking, I don't know what I would have chosen, so I guess this is the best ending.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is, too, look, I've been working in the entertainment industry since the 90s. So if I'm going to do a podcast in my spare time and finance it out of my own pocket, I'm going to have fun. I'm not going to do a conventional Hollywood story, beginning, middle, and end, nice big bow at the end. Like, no, I'm going to have fun and really go somewhere unique. And that's what I feel we did,
And the brilliance, I think, is that we've had like friends and family that will say, wait, is this what you meant? Is this what you meant? This one? And we always stop and go, I don't know. What do you think it means?
That's kind of how you have to look at all the weird stuff out there, though. It's like, what does it mean to you?
Right.
You can interpret someone's dreams, but it's more what it means to them than what, someone says it means.
Right.
And as they talk it out, they seem to always land on the answer.
Yeah. So, what other inspirations went to Strange Air?
What else, Mike? Well, I think for me, knowing Mike was an inspiration, because Mike is a successful voice actor who has his own booth, which I'm sitting in. And he knows how to mix audio. And during the pandemic shutdown, we're going back a few years, we all were sitting at home, time on our hands. I was a big audio drama fan since the Black Tapes and Limetown and Homecoming and all these other old school shows. Yeah. And I always wanted to do one. And it just seemed very daunting. Like, well, how do you do that? And I know I can write. I used to make a partial living as a writer, and Mike makes a living as a voice actor. He knew a lot of people who were voice actors. He had the equipment, the knowledge. So we kind of like bonded together, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really was out of convenience for both of us to say, well, you do this really well. You do this really well. Can we make these two things work together? And Tony and I have been friends for a while as well. So our friendship certainly was part of it. And as he said, we have no ego about it. So, even though he's directing me and we're friends, so he can say, that wasn't, let's just try it this way. Let's try it this way. And I'm like, yeah, great. Yeah. And same thing with the writing. It was like, you know what, this may not really work. Can we try something else? Let's give that a shot. The initial idea was Tony's actually, and with Coast to Coast kind of Art Bell thing. And we were just sitting outside and he looks and he's like, okay, but what if he just disappears? And we went,
but you can take that a step further. You can take that a step further back. And this is kind of interesting, Soraya. I think you probably will understand this because it's hard to explain, but it's interesting how ideas evolve. I find that fascinating.
Yes.
And the initial seed, I was volunteering as a volunteer at the D.D. Hirsch Mental Health Care Services on the suicide hotline, which basically meant I took calls from people who were thinking about taking their lives.
Right.
And I did that for about a year. Difficult and rewarding at the same time. So when we sat down for Strange Air, the initial thought was a guy who works in a suicide center taking calls, and one night he takes the wrong call. And then we started thinking, well, that sounds like a typical Hollywood thriller. Yawn. What about if he's a radio guy taking calls and that leads to something? Hey, what if he's a radio guy like Art Bell? And it sort of evolved from there. So you never know where you're going to go.
Yeah. Oh, no, I know. I've made a number of movies over the years, and yeah, they're never what they start as. It's like, okay, here's the script when I had one. And it would be like, oh, wait, what if we do this? Or what if we do this? And it just evolves as you're going.
It was a wonderful challenge between the two of us to, occasionally sit down and be like, okay, this is where we are. What's the yes and to that? We actually met doing improvisation a while ago, and that's the key rule is yes and. What's the bigger thing? What's the next thing? And I think that's kind of where the ending eventually evolved from. It was like, okay, we could do that, but what if we did this? Ooh, great. What if we did this?
Well, you did good.
Thank you.
What about Trap Street? Where did the inspiration for Trap Street come from? I don't know how much you want to say about it.
Well, I think we can say what a trap street is, right? I think we can.
Yeah,
that's something you can look up.
Proceed with caution, but go on.
Okay, so a trap street is a fictional street on a map, if that makes sense.
It's a copyright trap.
It's a copyright.
Yeah.
Basically, back in the day, people who made hard copy maps would spend all this time and energy going to locations, drafting the map in great detail, have it published, and then another company would steal the map. So how do you prevent that? Well, you take your map, and you put a fake street on it, totally made up. Now, if somebody copies that map, inadvertently, they're going to copy the mistake.
Yeah.
Which will link them to your map, and now you have a copyright infringement case. And those streets were called trap streets because they would trap people who were stealing your work. And this goes back to the late 1800s in London. Big thing. And it's just a fascinating idea to take that to the next more supernatural level.
Right.
In deciding what to do next, and I'll give credit to Tony for this. We sat down and he said, we have fans that liked Strange Air, so we need to stay in this genre of perhaps supernatural or otherworldly or different or whatever you want to call it. And we went, yeah, okay, and then we both had some ideas. Like, oh, okay, here's some ideas. And he just said the word Trap Street, and I went, what is a Trap Street? And I looked it up and did some research. And the second I heard it, I said, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is
it's a great title too.
Yeah. I knew about Trap Streets, but I didn't remember the name. Like, so I saw it with Trap Street. I'm like, I know what that is, but I don't remember. And I just waited till you guys explained it on the show.
Oh yeah, we got there eventually. That's not a spoiler. That's totally cool.
But I mean, someone can just Google it and find out what it is. I mean, it's not,
Yeah. But also,
if you Google Trap Street, our show will come up. But what an actual Trap Street will come up as well.
Yeah.
Can you imagine pitching this show? It would be the most boring thing. It's about copyright infringement.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Netflix tomorrow and pitch that. I have a podcast about copyright infringement, and it takes a supernatural turn. Why are you showing me the door?
Yeah.
No, they'll give you one season. It'll be very popular, and then they'll cancel you.
Probably.
That's what Netflix does.
You know what's funny, Sarai? Because you were mentioning why we did the second podcast, and actually, I used to be in the music business when I was a much younger man, and I know a lot of bands who would record that first song, and then suddenly they couldn't wait to do the second one because they had learned so much on the first.
Oh yeah,
Right.
And they wanted to apply that knowledge to the second, and that kind of musician thinking stuck with me because after Strange Air, we learned so much, and we wanted to apply it. And I got to tell you, we've done Trap Street for a fraction of the money we spent on Strange Air because we know what we're doing.
Right.
Well, time too. I mean, just learning what we're recording, how we're recording it, taking notes while we're recording.
And what I'll tell your listeners too, and this is such a valuable lesson. And Soraya, you've got these radio shows, you've got these multiple podcasts, but I'm sure there was a day one.
Oh yeah.
Where it seemed kind of daunting, right?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Well, that's the thing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, I had been doing music radio for a while, but doing a talk show was a completely different thing. And I was like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, is this just going to bomb? Because I don't know. I mean, especially with the topics I wanted to handle and the way I wanted to deal with them, not taking a exploitive sort of view of this stuff. Like, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm trying to actually delve into why people have these experiences and how consciousness works and how reality works. And I'm like, nobody is going to care. They just want ghost hunters, or they want, fantastical UFO stories. And I'm like, I don't see anyone actually caring, but apparently there was a big demand for this more serious view of the stuff.
Was this born out of something that you were interested in, or was it somebody came to you and said, hey, I want you to do a show about this? Because, it's a 180 from music. But
right. Sort of. I mean, because we would talk about some of this stuff during the music show. The music show, I mean, it's 6 hours. It was 6 hours long, 6.5 hours long now. And we do movie reviews and podcast reviews and stuff in between the music. Or tell stories or whatever. So the first thing I ever did is I had a friend of mine come up, and every talk break, we did a different paranormal or conspiracy type topic. And the response was huge. People were like, yeah, you need to do this more. And I'm like, okay, all right, good. That's encouragement.
Yeah.
And you found your way.
Yes, eventually. I actually did the first Where Did the Road Go interview on my music show. I contacted Walter Cruttenton and I said, let's try this. And he said, okay. And then I'm like, okay, I need your actual thoughts. Was this good? And he's like, yeah, you did really good. And I'm like, should I do this as a show? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, all right.
Very cool.
See, but therein lies the lesson. It's like, my term is, no matter how difficult something may seem or how new it may seem, it's figure-outable. You can figure it out. We live in a world where, there are a million tutorials online for the technical stuff. And then we have people who can encourage us on the creative end. And you found your way with your material. And listen, podcasting, I didn't know what the hell an RSS feed was. I had no idea. I think, well, where do I get one? Does it cost?
Right.
But you learn, you figure it out. And that's what I always try to tell a lot of my clients who are younger. It's like, don't be put off by things. You can figure most stuff out. Don't let that prevent you from pursuing your dream.
Yeah. So yeah, I've always been very interested in this stuff. Had a lifetime of weird experiences that I can't explain. And so it's one of those things where it was, I back in the 90s, I wanted to do a zine on this stuff because I did a music zine, and that led to my radio show, but I also wanted to do like a paranormal occult type of zine, and I just never actually did it. So
listen, we're dating ourselves using the word zine, but I used to have quite a few of them, and I would read them, and I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, zine culture was big in the 90s because it was a way to actually get information out there that didn't rely on major companies.
Right.
You could trust what you were reading.
Yeah. One of the music stores I left my music zines at, they would go through my zine quicker than they'd go through the main magazines.
Nice.
Hey, if you can outsell Rolling Stone, God bless you.
in one store.
Yeah,
right.
But still, I mean, that was great. It's like people actually would come in asking for it. So it's like, wow, all right, never made a dime off of it, but hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there were people who liked it and they made the effort to read it. So,
Yes.
that's a good thing.
No, and I just I just wanted to support the music scene. That was all that was my goal.
Right.
And instead I ended up with a radio show, which I also wanted, but thought I had to go to college to do.
There you go. Right. And yet you managed to pull it off. Good for you.
Yeah, well, it was handed to me because of the zine.
Good.
Oh,
But that's how one
there you
thing
go.
led to
You
another.
made your own break.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
3 seasons of Trap Street. You explained the Trap Street? Did you? But you haven't talked about like what happens. You want to give the people the beginning of what happens?
I'll give you the basic outline, which is on all the platforms because we're keeping it very simple. Basically, a young man who's a gamer, an unemployed gamer who lives in San Francisco, no job, no real prospects, just kind of a guy who's just kind of lost. One day gets an email. It's a mysterious email with a couple of attachments that download themselves to his computer without him clicking on anything. One picture, one of the downloads is a JPEG, a picture of a young woman with red hair and green eyes. And the other JPEG is a map. And the irony is that this is a character in dire need of direction who suddenly receives a mysterious map. And then we take it from there. What happens next?
Yeah, and I mean, the voice acting is great. The dialogue is great. The general audio is great. So, and it was with Strange Air as well, but it feels a little bit better with Trap Street
Because
Those were
we
lessons learned.
Yeah.
And it's funny what people fixate on too. We were lucky enough to get a semi-famous actor for Strange Air. We had Patrick Fabian, who was a character on Better Call Saul for 6 years, and he played the radio host Malcolm Smith, the guy who disappears, and people just fixated on his voice. Most of the good reviews would mention him and not us, which was fine. Hey, no problem. It got us a lot of attention. But Strange Air was definitely more the indie movie that goes to Sundance, as opposed to Trap Street, which is more of a big polished product.
I can see that. Yeah.
That's how I see it.
But not over polished.
Oh, no, I'm not. We're not capable of that.
No, I didn't want to learn Pro Tools. So,
so how much of it is written by each of you? Are you the only two doing the writing?
Tony did all the writing on Trap Street. That's all him. We kind of came up with the story and the concept, and then Tony took off and ran with it. And I fully admit he's a much better writer than I am. So he absolutely should have written.
Well, I'm more experienced. I don't know that I'm better, but I'm experienced. But we did share the duties on Strange Air.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, it's a constant back and forth. I mean, you got to have a second voice, even a third in a perfect world. So I'm not going off to write and then going to Mike, here it is, done. No, I need his opinion, and we paddle it back and forth. Yeah. And he might challenge me to do better, and then I find a direction that I hadn't thought of. So it really is a collaboration on both shows.
Cool. All right. And you guys haven't done anything else podcast-wise?
No, I mean I've been a guest on podcasts before here and there, but no, never written or I've done some voice work for podcasts before too. But this Strange Air was the first one, top to bottom, that we both did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got lucky. We got a little more attention than we expected and more reviews than we expected, and that's why we're doing Trap Street now. But no, this is enough. Soraya, please. What are you doing to me? You're gonna kill me.
So what's the next podcast going to be?
A podcaster loses his mind doing too many podcasts.
Yeah, two guys that are going crazy from trying to figure out where exactly the door knock should come in the middle of the next sentence.
It's funny. After Strange Air, we signed with a network to help promote us and get us commercials called the Fable and Folly Network.
Yeah.
And that was their first question. Well, Strange Air's done. What do you got next? I was like, oh, dear Lord. Okay. I mean, look, hey, man, these are good problems to have.
Yes.
But, and we actually are making some money, and the emphasis on the word some.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still in the red as far as the money we've put up for both shows, but we should break even by fall, and that's nice. Because look, here's the thing, man. Like I said, I grew up in the music scene in New York, and it's not always about money. I told Mike, if we're going to do this, I'm doing this for fun. I don't care if I ever make a penny. I want to have fun. Yeah. I want to work with actors who are creative, and I want to do something cool. That was it. If a couple of bucks come in, great.
Yeah, all the better.
Yeah.
Do you have a Patreon or anything for either show?
No, we have not gone in that direction.
Okay. So just the ad revenue then?
Yeah. Basically that. And it's it comes in on a monthly basis, and Fable and Folly handles all of that for us because I don't have enough time to do all that marketing and promotion work. It's just there are only so many hours in the day, and that rent needs to get paid.
Yeah.
And Fable and
Folly work that has to be done.
Fable and Folly has some great podcasts too.
They're terrific. It's these two guys, Sean and Russ, up in Canada. And like most Canadians, they're way too nice. If they were to go to New York, they would get mugged in a minute. But they're really good people. They're smart, and they are so helpful. Russ has basically been like Obi-Wan Kenobi to us.
Yeah, for sure. And we've met, through them, then the other producers and writers and actors that are that have shows on that network that we've met that have just they are also a source of information and inspiration to both of us. And when we see what they're doing, and we could do that, we could try that too,
right?
And and any question we have, technical or story or anything, and the entire community is just there to answer questions. It's been really great.
Yeah, that's so helpful to have somebody you can turn to who can actually tell you how to do something that they've done and you need to learn. Because if you don't have that, you're just, you're alone, and that's very difficult. You can try to reach people on social media, but, other podcasters have lives and their own concerns. So having this, like you said, this amazing group of people who are much more experienced and honestly much more talented than us, doing these huge shows that are always number one on the Apple podcast charts. It's great. It's great. Everybody needs a helping hand, man.
And the thing is, nowadays it's so hard to get exposure for new podcasts. Like music, the same thing. There's so much music out there now, and because everyone can record their own stuff and make it sound good and distribute it themselves, there's more stuff than like how do you sift through it? And the same with podcasts. When I started listening to podcasts, fiction podcasts, I started with Welcome to Night Vale.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's all these other ones, but it wasn't an overwhelming amount. And then now you look at it, and there's so many of them, and so many of them are not good. So you have to kind of sift through and be like, and you got all these big companies now, the BBC and stuff making podcast series and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, some of these are good. Some of them are surprisingly good. Others are not, but it just adds to that. You're going to see those first because they're the big money companies. And
those big money companies attract big money actors.
Yes.
You got Rami Malek, you got John Hamm, and for little indie guys like us, we have to compete with that.
Yeah.
And it's hard. So Audible, Wondery, Q-Code, all these companies, and it's become saturated. You know what, Soraya? I'm going to share my fantasy with you. May I do that?
Absolutely.
I want to buy a DeLorean, and I want to travel back in time to when I first heard an audio drama like the Black Tapes, and then make Strange Air.
Right. Yeah.
I guarantee we would have a TV deal now. We'd be flying out to New York to meet you in person on our Learjet.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was such a new thing. It never even occurred to me I can do this.
And the thing too is that a lot of the TV deals though haven't worked out.
No.
Welcome to Night Vale got a TV deal, never came to fruition. I think the Black Tapes and Tanis both got something, and it never came to fruition. Limetown did the one, but it was on like Facebook or something.
Facebook, yeah.
And it wasn't.
I know Umbrella Academy is and Homecoming, but they did 2 seasons of Homecoming, and the second one was not very good.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet.
The first season's really good. It follows the podcast, and it's actually well done. But
But you're right. The majority of them are getting screwed because people, and just so everyone knows how this works, because I don't know how many people know, I'm actually an agent. I work as an agent by day. So I know how a lot of these deals are structured. Nobody is selling their shows. They're getting optioned.
Yeah.
Right. So some Terry, and I don't want to speak for Terry Miles behind the Black Tapes or any of these other creators. They're getting their shows optioned. And they spend months and months, if not years, developing the material. And then suddenly when it's time to give it a green light, the light is not green, it's red.
Yeah.
And you've tied up your property for a very small amount of money, hoping it will pay off. That's the way the game is played. A lot of screenplays get developed that way. But you're right, Soraya. It is difficult because very few have made it on the air, and the few that have not lasted long.
No.
Yeah.
Archive 81. Which did great on Netflix.
Ooh.
I mean, it was number one on their service, but apparently it cost them too much, and they were like, not worth it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, and they deviated so much from the weirdness of the podcast. A lot of people who started with the podcast were like, I don't like this.
Well, that's a shame. You want to turn off the people who are going to support the show.
Yeah. But I mean, the podcast is so weird. And I'm going, how are you even going to do the second season? I'm like, oh, you're not. You're going in a completely different direction, which I was totally okay with because I had already listened to the podcast. Give me something a little bit different, you know?
I think that's the challenge, right? Is you're going to bring in the podcast fans to a television series because they love the podcast. But it has to be different because you can't just tell that same thing because then there's no surprises.
Yeah, it's hard. I feel like I got into podcasting at the right time, and that was the other thing.
Yeah. Because
I started in 2013 before there were a billion podcasts out there.
Wow. Yeah.
And initially to me, it was just a radio show. I mean, none of my shows are numbered, but they're dated because that's the date it airs on the radio.
Right.
And I think being on an FM radio station allowed me to get bigger name guests right from the beginning because they were like, well, okay, you're not just some guy starting a podcast. You're on an FM radio station.
Right.
And luckily, I was apparently good enough to retain that. And those guests came back more than once and were like, no, this was great. And it's like, okay, cool. Because I had no idea. I mean, dealing with this stuff, like I had friends who were vaguely interested in it. So it seemed like I knew what I was talking about, but I wasn't talking to the people who really knew the stuff.
Right.
So it made me...
Are you producing yourself too? Or do you have a producer that's helping you in reading stuff and getting guests and finding out what you need to know?
It is all me.
Wow.
Yes, and it's a little bit overwhelming, honestly.
Sure. I imagine because you must read a lot of books.
Yes. And I do a lot of other stuff too. And I used to read very quickly until I got COVID, and I have never fully gotten back the concentration I had prior.
Wow.
Like I'm definitely reading faster now, but it's not the same. Like I start just glossing over stuff. So I used to be the guy where, you know, if someone released a book that was 800 pages, but they had a 300-page version, I'm like, no, I want the 800-page version.
Sure.
And now I'm like, oh God, 800, 300 pages, man. Oh, geez.
And how are you enjoying like the interaction with listeners and fans?
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I have such, I mean, you know, when you put a smart show out there, you get smart fans. So it's when we do Ask Us Anything shows, man, some of the questions, it's just like, wow, okay.
There's been some one of the ones I listened to that had a lot of listener stories too that I thought were fascinating.
Yeah.
To really dive into some of those subjects and just people's own experiences was amazing.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many of those that are just really interesting, and I think because we're not focused on one thing, people will feel a little more comfortable giving us those stories when they don't really fit in any particular category.
Yeah.
That's how Art Bell worked, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Have you guys had weird experiences yourself?
You know, it's interesting. I was just thinking about that. It's been mostly positive. Some people have really given us in-depth reviews of the show that totally get it, and it's so flattering that they take the time to write it down. But I gotta tell you, I remember when I get the most pleasure from the outliers. From the weird ones. There's an episode of Strange Air where Malcolm Smith's on the radio talking about his love of exploration, which is no longer is a thing. He's saying how great it would be to be alive in the days of Magellan and Columbus, where you could explore new territories and go beyond the map and see what's out there. And that defines him as a character. We got an email. We got a written review about that saying, well, this show supports Christopher Columbus, who was a mass murderer and killed Native Americans.
Of course.
So I'm not going to listen to the show. I'm out. And Soraya, I was stunned. Strange Air is 6 hours and 10 minutes long. The Christopher Columbus reference is 10 seconds, and we lost a listener.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had stuff like that happen.
Have you? Yep. It's crazy, right? But it's interesting that people fixate on certain things.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not wrong. He was a horrible human being, but that wasn't really the point of the comment.
Correct.
Yeah, and I'm not in any way advocating for him.
Right, exactly.
But he is somebody who, there is a holiday. He is mentioned in the textbooks. I'm not reinventing anything. And I find those fascinating. And like I said, I don't get upset. And it's not that I'm being I'm not looking down on the person who made that review.
Right.
I'm just surprised that that's a direction people choose to take. And then they go out of their way to log on to a computer and actually type it in and post it.
Right.
I don't have enough time to feed myself. And this guy has time to make that. So I love the good. I love the bad. Like you said, I love interacting with people who are into on any level of the show.
The only interactions I don't like, and I mostly will get them on YouTube, is where someone will just be like, well, that's wrong. What's wrong? You know, like no info, no. It's just like, what are you even referring to? You know?
Yeah.
They're listening. They've decided this thing that they heard was wrong, and they might be right, but since they didn't give me any further info, like
we had
you do a music show, Soraya, so music is subjective.
Well, that too, yeah.
I can name my favorite bands, and you might say, "Ooh, really? That's who you're into?" I mean, it's also subjective. So, I think people just, they get into this very myopic point of view where they only see their perspective and no others.
True, very true, especially nowadays. Unfortunately,
unfortunately,
a little divisive these days.
I feel like there's really 4 types of music. There's music you like that's good. There's music you like that's not good. There's music you don't like that's good, and music you don't like that's not good.
Yeah.
Because you can empirically say, like, a band like Genesis or Dream Theater is empirically good. Doesn't mean you have to like them, but they are talented musicians who can write really good songs. And then there's bands that just jam and they're kind of off and they're just having fun, but it might appeal to you and you'll like it. And you're like, well, technically they're not good, but I like them.
Yeah, and also it's when you first heard a song or a band.
Yeah. Yep.
There are some songs that I can say for sure are not good songs, but I heard them growing up. I have an attachment to them. Like, for example, the Pina Colada song. Come on. That's terrible. Not Jim Morrison. That's not, it's bad. But I remember laughing at it as a kid and it stuck with me. And when I hear it now, I smile. So it also depends on your personal connection to the material, whether it's a song or a movie or a podcast.
Yeah. And that's I'll be talking to someone. I'll be like, and they'll say something like, "Oh yeah, I love Celtic Frost," and I'm like, "Yeah, except Cold Lake," and they'll be like, "Oh no, Cold Lake's okay," and I'll be like, "What?" And they'll be like, "Well, it's the first one I heard." I'm like, "Okay, now it makes sense."
Yeah.
It's the album that got you into the band, even if it's the worst thing that band ever did, is still going to be on your like list later. You may realize it's not their best record, but you're still going to be like, "No, but it's what got me into them, so it's okay."
Yeah. Right.
If they follow it up with "I like Nickelback," then you just shut the door in their face and walk away.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, as far as you two, have you two had any personal experiences, like weird personal experiences?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think the one that I can distinctly remember that I always come back to is I was actually here in LA and I was crossing a street and I was waiting for the light to change and it was not too long after my father had passed away years ago. And I was about to, in my brain, I saw the light change, the walk sign go, and I literally started to take a step off the curb. And it's not like I was shoved back, but I suddenly went, nope. And I stepped back and a millisecond later, the city bus flew by me in the lane.
Oh, wow.
And I just stopped and looked up and went, thanks, Dad. That was it. I appreciate it. Thank you. I've always had interesting, very strange, and I'm not the most religious person, but I definitely believe in the soul. And every now and then, boy, there's something up there that just says, nope, not yet. Over there. Take a right, not a left.
Right.
And that was that experience.
Huh. And what about I don't know who I'm talking to be honest.
Oh, that was me. That was Mike.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. So what about Tony?
Well, if Mike is Mulder, I am Scully.
Okay.
I've had moments in my life. I think 95% of what we hear can be explained.
Yeah. It's
the other 5% that I find fascinating. And I had an interesting conversation with someone who's really into cryptozoology. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the idea of Bigfoot, because Bigfoot is not a character, but a topic that comes up on Strange Air quite a bit.
Oh, right.
And I do not accept the idea that there is possibly a creature from this unknown species that's been running around for hundreds of years in the Pacific Northwest and other areas. I don't believe that's true.
Right.
And then my friend said, well, wait a minute. What if Bigfoot was something else? What if he was something that had slipped through from a different dimension, one that we never knew existed? And I said, I thought about that, Sarai, and I thought, you know what? I can see that. For some reason, that has just a tinge of science, and I believe that could be true. So to me, all these mysteries, whether it's a UFO, a spirit, Bigfoot, I think it's all how you look at it and approach it. So I am like the poster in the X-Files. I want to believe.
And that's one of the things I try to do with the show is find new ways of approaching this stuff, because one of the things I pointed out years ago was that when people go out Bigfoot hunting, they're getting stones thrown at them, they're hearing vocalizations, they're wood knocks. This is all poltergeist phenomena. If this was happening in a house, they'd be going, this is a ghost.
Right.
Right down to things like footprints and, even apparitions of things. I mean, this is all within the realm of poltergeist phenomena. So how much of this stuff is connected to the same way we manifest poltergeist phenomena, and maybe even amped up a little more because we're out in the woods, we're away from all the electromagnetics that affect us? I have less of a problem with an undiscovered ape, say in the Pacific Northwest or the Himalayas, than I do with a undiscovered ape in New Jersey.
Right.
This something that big is going to have a huge appetite. In order to have a breeding population, there's got to be tons of them.
Yeah.
But the other thing you find out, and two of my co-hosts, Timothy Renner and Joshua Cutchin, wrote a 2-book series called Where the Footprints End. And that's where they started, is when I made this observation of the poltergeist activity. Joshua named it the Wilderness Poltergeist. And they started looking at Bigfoot accounts and finding out that in most Bigfoot accounts, there's other stuff that the Bigfoot researchers leave out because it's not like flesh and blood ape stuff. So
interesting.
So Tim will talk to someone and be like, okay, you had this Bigfoot encounter, et cetera, et cetera. Did you ever see anything else weird in that area? And they'll be like, yeah, sometimes there's lights, but that has nothing to do with Bigfoot. It's like, okay, so you see weird unexplained lights, and then you have a Bigfoot encounter. Another guy was describing a Bigfoot as a ghost because he had a Bigfoot encounter, and then he's like, yeah, I got a ghost in my house. And when he described the ghost, it was basically a large, hairy man that he'd see a shadow of. So there is something, to me, I like looking at, first of all, how we perceive things.
Yes.
Which is not how most people think we perceive things. We're getting interpretations based on what's actually there, what our brain thinks is important, et cetera, et cetera. And it has to have something to compare it to. So we can't trust our senses. And I don't ever want to say, people aren't experiencing things. But I think when you look, you find these phenomena go across cultures and across time. They're named different things. They're described, like if you take just the descriptions, they're very similar, but they're named different things and they have different cultural interpretations.
Right.
So it's I was just going to say, so it makes it a human experience. If nothing else, it is a human experience. It's not. We don't have to prove that these things happen because these things happen, but we don't know what they are. We don't know if they're simply us or something other.
Right.
Yeah, and your point is so perfect, Soraya. It's about perception and what your life experience is at the time you have this experience. Mm-hmm. Like if you go back 200 years ago and you have somebody look up in the sky and see a 747 fly by, well, they have no point of reference to that.
Right.
So is that a winged serpent?
Yeah,
is
exactly.
That a creature? They don't know that it's a plane, a metal plane with people in it. So yeah, it's what we bring to it. And I would imagine as time goes on, more and more answers will be revealed, and some of them will be scientific and some of them won't.
I think to study this stuff, it's as much things like psychology and anthropology as it is hard sciences.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I think it's also environmental. It's how the environment affects us. We read about a study that was done that showed certain types of psychic events happen more during low solar activity, and other ones consistently happen more during high solar activity. And this is like across however many lab tests they went. They're like, yeah, when there's more solar activity, this type of psychic stuff works better when there's, and then vice versa. And it's like, okay, so we know the sun is affecting us pretty strongly on this subtle level, whatever that level is, because we don't know how this stuff works. But whatever it is affecting, solar energy or these electrical energy from the sun is affecting us.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
Interconnectivity.
that's very well put.
Yeah.
And also, there's an element to all these topics that they tickle the brain.
Yeah.
Even if they're outlandish and extreme, it's fascinating to read. Even if you don't believe it, it's both entertaining, but it makes you realize the potential for a greater world. And I don't want to make that sound all hoity-toity, but I think that's invigorating to be forced to think outside the box, or at least be open to that thought process.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's very important. People, and a lot of people just get stuck in there. This is what I like.
Mm-hmm.
They like.
This is what I believe. This is my guy in the politics. This is it. I'm stuck. I've made my decision. I'm not open to anything. And oh my God, what a horrible way to live.
It's easy to stay inside your box.
It is. It's very easy to stay inside your box. Like with nuts and bolts UFOs. When you really look at the UFO phenomena, there's so much stuff going on there, and very little of it points toward nuts and bolts UFOs. But there's still tons of people who are going to just hold on to that nuts and bolts UFOs thing.
Interesting.
Right.
Or think the government.
What is a UFO? It's an unidentified flying object.
Right.
It's not a flying saucer from Mars. It could be, but it could be a lot of other things. And I think that's the one field that has the potential to be, from my perspective, very believable. I mean, there's very interesting things happening now. I'm excited about that.
But I think the idea that the government's going to tell us anything is also kind of a joke.
Oh, yeah. No.
They're going to tell us whatever it is that's going to put us in the position they want us in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
well, Mike, that's it, Mike. We're packing up the podcast booth. We're going to Roswell next week.
That's it.
We're going to get some answers. We're going to do
Breaking
a real
into 51.
Show. Yes. Trap Street, Strange Air. Come on. We're going to go see what's happening at Roswell.
That would probably be nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because
Because
anything that is happening would never be that high profile. Exactly.
And
maybe right in the beginning, but as soon as one person said, "Hey, something weird going on there," they packed up and moved.
Yeah, they're in Ithaca now.
Yeah.
Well, Ithaca is a weird place. It is. There is a sect of Buddhism here. I forget which it is, but it's considered, if I'm remembering right, the third strongest energy point on the planet.
No kidding.
Really?
Yeah. And it's definitely has some weird stuff there. I mean, I've had plenty of weird experiences in Ithaca. And I've told this story before. I went to fix my neighbor's internet, and it was this older woman I've never met, and her landlord, who I did know, but neither of them knew I did this show. And as I'm sitting there fixing her TV, she goes, I see UFOs over the lake sometimes.
Oh.
Just out of the blue. And I'm like, yep, that's a thing. Cayuga Lake has had UFO, and there's a fault line running right along it. And there is a correlation between fault lines and UFO sightings. And so I'm like, yep, that's a thing. And the landlord's like, she's like, what do you mean that's a thing? And she starts Googling it. She goes, oh my God, that's a thing. And this woman's going, yeah, we stood out there and there were lights and they were moving in weird ways. And I'm like, yep. And I saw a huge UFO over Cayuga Lake. And I sat there looking at it going, I don't know what that is. It's bright as anything I've ever seen. And it's slowly dipping down into the lake. Okay, that's weird.
Wow.
Okay.
Is that, are you born and raised in Ithaca too, or just
No.
you've been there for a long time?
I've been here since 85. I was actually born on Long Island.
Okay. So did some of your love for the, call it the supernatural, is it because you've been in Ithaca and you're like, I've just seen a lot of really weird stuff?
No, I always loved this stuff.
Oh, okay.
No,
Cool.
my thing with my own experiences started when I started having a Kundalini awakening when I was like 12 or 13.
Huh.
And that I had no idea what it was. I mean, it was the 80s. I had no concept of, what this was. All I knew I was in a lot of pain. And it took me until the early 90s before I came across the concept of Kundalini and went, oh my God, this is everything I've been experiencing.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah.
And it's, my experiences generally don't repeat. I have very weird experiences and they're one-offs, sometimes with other people there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where I'm just like, all right, that happened, I try not to put it in a box or limit it in any way.
Yeah.
Even
I've always believed that I've always wanted to be more open to all of the subjects like this that I hear about, and it's so easy to be dismissive of it.
Yes.
But the more you hear about it and read about it and listen to it, the more you go, wait a minute, there's something here. There's something bigger.
And maybe it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back. All right, quick mid-show break here. Contact info and recommendation. Contact info, first of all, is wheredidtheroadgo.com. Everything's there. Everything from our Discord to our Twitter to our Facebook pages to everything. Emails are there. Just look for the contact tab for emails. And specifically, if you want to send us a story to be read on the air or come on and talk about a story, it's stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. We're also now broadcasting through Acast, so there's Acast players and stuff on the page from this point forward. It doesn't have all the old shows in Acast. I don't know if I can actually do that, but they will still be on the page. And nothing should change. Just kind of a backup host using Acast, and you may get the occasional ad. Unless you're a Patreon, in which case then you get ad-free stuff. And the show's a week early. And extra stuff as well. And it's only $3 a month. And you can just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the big Patreon link. I'm also working on a coffee one as well for people who don't want to use Patreon with some of the same benefits. All right, so for a recommendation, I'm going to go with Dark Matter. Dark Matter is a sci-fi show on Apple TV, and it kind of does the multiverse thing. And I didn't love it, but I definitely recommend it. It's really good. It has some really interesting paradoxes in it. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. And it has pretty good ratings online. There was one thing that really bugged me, and I'm not going to say what it was. But when I looked in the Reddit group for the show, apparently it bugged a lot of people because they kind of do something without really explaining it. And, sometimes stories do that just because it's easier than going through all the details. But besides that, it was really interesting, and it went places I wasn't expecting it to. So it was kind of neat. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend Dark Matter on Apple TV. Just finished season 1. I would also recommend Dark Matter that was on Sci-Fi Channel like 6 or 7 years ago. They did like 3 seasons. That was phenomenal. And then it got canceled on a cliffhanger, of course, because that's when you want to cancel things. I don't know why people do cliffhangers. They just, it doesn't do anything for anyone. It just leaves you hanging. Yeah. But yeah, Dark Matter. That's my recommendation for this week.
I got this really strange email last night.
I need to see what's going on with this mystery file.
Hey, it's a map of a town called Ocean Bay.
Someone sent these images to you for a reason.
I'm so lost right now.
When was the last time you chose a direction and followed it?
I'm going to Ocean Bay.
We don't get many tourists this time of year.
Ocean Bay is a friendly town, but we're not that friendly.
I never sent you an email. I don't even know you.
And why exactly are you here?
The map is the reason we're here.
Maps help when you're lost.
Do you know what a trap street is?
Trap streets aren't real. They don't exist.
Don't trust anyone unless they give you a reason to trust them.
I think he's dead.
How could so much damage happen to a human body in such a short period of time?
What the hell is going on here?
From the creators of Strange Air, this is Trap Street.
So maps can have secrets.
Yes. Maps can have secrets.
I'm here with Mike and Tony from Strange Air and Trap Street. For a moment, I couldn't remember the other podcast. And we were talking about weird stuff. And I like the way that you handle it on your shows. Because here's the other thing I find interesting. And we actually did a whole show on this at one point, how a lot of fiction writers who write supernatural fiction don't believe in it. Like they're just like, yeah, I don't believe in that. The guy who writes the John Dies at the End of novels, for example. he has, I mean, when you read those novels, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of comedy in there, but there's also this subtle, like, almost seems like a deeper understanding of how this stuff actually works. But then you find out that he is an materialistic skeptic who doesn't believe in any of it, and literally says in one of the books that if you think you've had a paranormal experience, you have a mental health issue.
Oh dear Lord.
And like in the afterwards, he's like, don't write me with your stories, go see a therapist. It's like, well, that's weird because you're writing these stories that are right like on the pulse of it.
Interesting. I think maybe the challenge as a writer is to explore something like that that's alien to you, right?
Yeah, maybe. And I get
if you write, you know,
I get. Sorry, go ahead.
No, we're doing this we're not facing each other, so it's hard to get the timing right. Please, Soraya, you go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, because I don't think that Terry Miles believes in any of this stuff either.
I don't think so. From their interviews I've heard of him, I think he finds it very entertaining.
Right.
And the thing is, listen, if you're a good writer, all this stuff, all this supernatural and paranormal material, it's great fodder for a story. I mean, how much fun to explore it. You know, based on our earlier interview, Mike is more of a believer than I am, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. And I certainly don't write down about it. I would never insult the listeners who believe in it. I find it fascinating. The nature of faith, to me, is just so interesting, how people can have so much faith in something that cannot be proven. Right. I mean, that's the basis of religion, right?
Yep.
Is there any difference between someone who believes in God and someone who believes in Bigfoot?
Right.
It's faith. Right. That's how I come across it.
Well, it's more understandable with Bigfoot if you've had an actual Bigfoot sighting.
Sure.
Because if you've seen it, you're going to be like, okay, well, I saw it. I believe it's a thing now, you know?
Right.
Yeah, but you meet people who live in the city, you know, who live in LA and never leave LA, and they're like, oh no, I believe in Bigfoot. And
yes.
Have you been to the? Oh no, I hate that. I hate the outdoors. I never camp. I hate the camping. But no, look at all these stories. It has to be true. So you know, you get a really interesting mix of people. I find any kind of subculture fascinating.
Yeah, true. And there's plenty of them.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is you know there are certain things where I go, yeah, okay, that's a stretch of the imagination to believe in something, but if it cannot be proven and there's no scientific proof saying this thing does not happen, then I don't know if it's a positive outlook or my outlook on it is, well, then why couldn't it be true?
Right.
You know,
and that's, like I said earlier, if you talk to somebody 200 years ago and tell them that one day people will be flying through the sky in metal tubes, they'll go, well, no, science can't prove that. Well, not yet. So again, it comes down to, you know, perception, right?
Well, at the beginning of the 1900s, the first guy who proposed tectonic plate theory was ridiculed, blackballed, and died broke because that was a ridiculous concept. And now, of course, we're like, oh yeah, tectonic plates. Yep.
Yeah.
People didn't understand infections. That little germs could be inside your body doing harm. It was absurd. Did these little germs have faces? Did they have names? You know, nobody believed it. I find that fascinating. And I will have to imagine in 100 years, somebody will dig up the tape of this interview we're doing and they'll say, oh, they were so off, those three.
Fools. Yeah.
We have shadow people living next door to us.
Right.
It's all there, man.
Well, there are theories that we go through cycles where we do perceive this stuff more, and that we are in the lowest cycle right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we don't know what other cosmic ray type of stuff might be happening that changes how we perceive reality.
Right.
Because in the end, that's what it is. It's a perception of reality.
It is. That's absolutely it. And also, we live in a world now where technology enables that potential. I mean, you know, thanks to the internet and social media.
Oh, yeah.
It sort of enables this kind of thinking, and that can be good and bad.
Yes. Yep. That is true.
The hive mind is not always a positive.
Well, if you look at UFO Twitter, it's not a positive thing.
Sure.
I got to go look at UFO Twitter.
But it seems like especially Twitter, seems to bring out the worst in people for some reason.
Well, it's really easy to hide behind nothing, a handle that's not you, a picture that's not you, and I think it frees people up to just be their absolute worst. And you know, I don't know if it's just they have zero morality or they just don't care, but at a certain point, you go, well, do you really feel that way, or are you just being a jerk?
True. Yeah, and people will say that about Reddit, but I find Reddit to be far less like that.
I enjoy Reddit. I think it's actually a much more positive experience.
Yeah, so that's how I feel about it as well. I mean, every once in a while, there's a trolling comment here and there, but they get downvoted,
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to be downvoted, so you try to avoid that. I've been very encouraging on Reddit. I agree. I'm with them.
The other thing about technology is that it makes this stuff even harder to parse out, like UFOs, for example. I mean, we have so much stuff in our skies. How many people have seen the Starlink satellites and thought they were looking at a UFO?
Right.
Or a drone.
Right.
I mean, I saw a drone once come down. There was an accident on the side of the lake, and as I was coming into the town, I saw this light kind of moving in a weird way in the sky, and I'm like, what is that? And then I'm like, oh, it's a drone. Okay.
Mm.
And someone who lived in the city must have flown the drone up to see what was going on with the accident.
Wow. Well, what the other problem is?
An uptick in UFO sightings and things like that since drones and drone technology has been out?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Because there's no like center that all UFO sightings get reported to.
Oh, true. Yeah.
What were you saying?
I was going to say the sad thing is with technology is that when we finally get some definitive proof, nobody will believe it.
Yes,
they're going to think it was altered by Photoshop or ChatGPT. When we have that one picture, that one image, that one video that is true, not fabricated, no one's going to believe it, and I find that so upsetting.
Yeah. If this stuff can even show up truly in photographs, I mean, you get something, but it's never usually what the person experiences exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right, of course. And I've seen some fake pictures and fake images online. It's like, oh, come on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so, how much free time do you have?
Yeah, but some of those get millions of views.
I know.
They throw an ad on it. Look, alien lands in field. And it's like, oh my god, this is so fake. But I just clicked on it.
Well, right. and the AI picture generators makes that a whole lot easier because you just have to type in a few words and it creates some very realistic photos.
So what are your guys' feelings on the whole AI artistic thing?
Well, go ahead, Tony.
I said I have no fear that Skynet is going to take over. That's more to me an extreme concern. I think it's here. It ain't going anywhere, and it's going to evolve, and it's going to evolve much quicker than we realize. Am I concerned? To a point, but like any technology, we're always very afraid of it when it first appears, and then there's a certain degree of acceptance and adaptation. So I don't know. I'm mildly concerned, but like I said, Skynet's not coming. They're not going to launch nukes because they know that people are the problem with the planet. That's extreme. So yeah, I'm proud to say I am not in the same camp as Elon Musk, who is terrified of AI.
And what about
Mike?
you?
You scared? Mike, you happy? You scared? What are you?
Oh no, I'm not scared. I think.
Mike, just be honest. Tell us the right or truth. You actually are AI. You're my partner.
Yeah, I'm not real.
AI for some time.
Well, I guess also like, what are your thoughts on it as far as like people using it to make art and stuff like that?
There's especially on the entertainment side for voice actors and actors and writers. I know that they can create voices that sound 100% human and read a script, but yes, it will take jobs, I'm sure. But for the most part, people still want human interaction, and they want a human actor, a human writer to create this thing.
Yeah.
And an AI cannot have a human experience, so I still think that's the bonus for creators.
When you think about it, it's interesting because like anyone who creates something is taking from their life experience, from other art they've seen, other stuff that's moved them. AI is kind of just Googling it and then making a rough approximation. So it's doing something sort of similar, but without any like emotion.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, sure, the voices and stuff can sound very similar to human voices now, but there's still that uncanny valley sort of feel to them.
Yes.
The knowledge that AI is using now, it's not earned.
Right.
Life experience is earned, and that's where the great art comes from. As far as it taking jobs and whatnot, I think it's going to be a degree of that. I think ultimately, from a writing perspective, which is more direct to what I do, it'll become a valuable tool to all writers. I don't think screenplays are going to be written solely by AI. And I mean, good luck with that. But I can see, listen, from my own perspective, the work I do, it's such a valuable time saver as far as researching and options. We, a large part of Trap Street season 1, it's set in a town called Ocean Bay, which is a little coastal community in the Pacific Northwest. And I fed a question to ChatGPT saying, basically, can you describe this town? I gave it the name, the location, and a brief history. I got 3 pages back that were fascinating. I can't use all of it, but there were things in there that got me thinking in new directions. So I think ultimately that's what it's going to be in the short term. As far as the long term goes, I don't know. I have concerns. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Soraya?
Well, for one, it's not actually intelligence. It's just algorithms. So it's not sentient, so it's just a program running and learning from its own, learning from itself, learning from Googling things, and which is why it gets the worst of things eventually, because, like what was the Twitter one that started getting all racist and stuff.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
So you get that type of stuff. There was a company who decided, they ran a line for overeating, I think it was, or eating disorders, and they fired everyone and just put AI on the calls, and the AI was giving the worst advice imaginable. And this to me is the danger of AI, is people thinking it can do more than it actually can do.
Right.
I
had read an article about an attorney who got just destroyed by a judge because he had AI write an answer to something that he had to file, and AI just made up cases. Now, they were pieces of actual cases, but nobody knew what they were. And the judge said, well, this is a really good argument. I will go look up these cases, and they didn't exist. And then the attorney had to admit in court that he just turned in whatever AI wrote. And it's like, that's the danger. You can't just do it. You can ask it questions like Tony said, and it'll come up with this brilliant stuff, but not everything is usable.
Yes. Yeah. And I've seen numerous news articles where at the end of the article, it says this news article was written by AI. Please fact check your data, the data or whatever. And it's like, isn't that what you're supposed to do?
That's your job. Yeah. Don't you have an editor?
No, they fired everyone.
Yeah.
AI just writes clickbait.
Yeah.
But here's the thing though, it's hard to define exponential growth.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen with AI. And I have to wonder, if it grows at this rate, what it'll be like in a year or two.
Right.
I'm curious. I'm curious. Like I said earlier, I think it's going to be exciting. I think it'll be more good than bad. My hope is that it'll become a tool that can help fields like medical field, that can help find cures for diseases in ways that most human doctors cannot do, and other areas like that. I think that's exciting. It's amazing. Look, I went to high school in the 80s. We had no PCs.
Right.
I'm holding a computer in my hand called an iPhone as I talk to you. The exponential growth in technology from the 1980s to today, it's insane. It could not have been predicted. So how can we possibly know what AI may or may not be in another 10 or 20 years?
I mean, how many times were we told we wouldn't be walking around with a calculator in our pocket? And they were right. It's an entire computer.
Right. Yeah. It's a movie studio. I think you can use it to be more productive, and if you can train the AI, what you're using ChatGPT or whatever it is, to say, here's what I need, these parameters, this, and it spits something out, it should be used to then spur your creativity or your marketing email or whatever you're using it for. It should be the launch pad for the next thing that you then come up with.
Yeah. Microsoft used it. Was it Microsoft? I think it was Microsoft used theirs they were looking for alternatives to lithium batteries. And the AI tested something like 10 million different combinations of things. And actually came up with something that should work better than our lithium batteries by quite a bit. And I went, okay, this is what we need AI for right there. That's the proper use of AI.
Right.
I don't really, like Late Night with the Devil, the movie that came out.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And people were criticizing it because they used AI to create the Be Right Back scenes. And I thought,
what? I'm sorry. Which scenes are those? Help me out.
When they went to commercial and it said "Be Right Back" and it had the owl in the corner, they just had AI come up with those, and I'm like, I'm fine with that. That was just kind of a set piece,
Right.
Like,
and it's a low budget movie.
Right.
It probably saved them a couple of bucks.
Exactly.
And I got news for people. If you think AI is new, I mean, look at some of the bigger budget movies like the Marvel series and all these other films. We've been using various forms of AI for quite some time.
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if a little movie like The Devil, you're going to choose that to criticize as opposed to applauding what they pulled off on no budget, then that's your problem.
Yeah, it's some people are just really anti-AI and they went after it for that. And I'm like, okay, but really any one of them could have sat and just made that. And, you know, like it's not a work of art. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think there's limits to what's okay. Like I wrote a short story and I'm like, I used AI to just create a graphic to go with the story. And just because I wanted a picture so it'll stand out a little more on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend who's one of my co-hosts who's very anti-AI, and he's like, well, you could have paid this person to do it. I'm like, okay, here's the thing. I don't have money to pay that person to do it. That person doesn't have time to do it for free. But hey, AI made it in like 2 seconds. Well, it took me a little bit, and I actually ended up photoshopping a bunch of it till it came out right. But the point is, like, it was just kind of a secondary thing. It's the book I'm working on. Yeah, I have an actual artist who did the cover of the book.
Right.
Okay. But your use of it, Soraya, to me is perfectly acceptable. It's not creating the content. It's helping you achieve a very specific goal in an affordable manner. So, hey, man, power to you.
For a story that was like 2 paragraphs long.
Right.
It was just
so you're doing flash fiction, and now they're going to attack you for that. Great.
Well, no one. He didn't really attack me, but he was just like, "Oh, you could have had this. You could have had Matt Festa do it." And I'm like, Matt's really busy, and I can't pay Matt to do it because I'm not making any money off this story. I just wanted to put it out there,
Right.
Hey, listen.
Well, I think that's a lot of. It's going to help create content quicker, and some of it'll be good, and some of it'll be great, and some of it'll be terrible. But it'll help that process along as opposed to stalling it, and putting a stop sign in front of you. You'd say, well, no, just go do it.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to create now.
Listen, guys, I think in 20 years, people are going to be saying, oh, remember 20 years ago? It was so quaint that we had artistic concerns about and writing scripts and doing voices for actors. How quaint is that? Now they're building cities for us. So, again, it's all perception. And listen, here's the other thing. There is a massive amount of venture capital going into this field. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars being invested. And if you saw, you noticed last week, Apple, their stock went through the roof because they announced their AI plans, which, by the way, it's not their personal AI construct. It was sort of an association with an outside company.
Right.
But still, their stock went up like 8 or 9% in 1 week, which for that company is unheard of. So there's a lot of, energy out there about AI, earned or unearned. And so this is not going to go anywhere, is what my point is.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's going to be a hard stop at some point. Like if it's going to not be able to evolve beyond a certain point.
Yeah, what's the limit? I don't know. That's a great question. How far can it go?
But at a certain point, can't you train AI to make AI better?
Possibly. Yeah. There was I think it was the Everlasting Stories podcast. They had a short story in there that was like 5 parts, and it had an AI that the construction of the computer was complex enough that the AI was actually a soul incarnated into the computer.
Oh my.
Oh.
And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And it was like, in the story, it's the only truly intelligent AI because they had been trying to create AI, but none of it was truly sentient. But this was sentient. And when asked about it, and like the appearance he would project with his hollow projector or whatever, someone finally goes, why do you pick this? He's like, oh, that's who I was in my past life.
Oh, wow.
And he explains dying and then finding himself coming to consciousness within this machine that was just dynamic enough to support consciousness.
Wow.
And I'm
that's where this gets fascinating. How do you define life and consciousness, and at what point does it become sentient? I mean, the TV show Westworld did a semi-decent job of addressing that. You know, what is life? How do you define it? How is this person not alive? That would be the topic of my third and final podcast.
Yeah. Does it lead to being able to download consciousness into? I think there's a rather bizarre but funny show on either Amazon or Netflix called Upload, where you can, as you're dying, you upload yourself to the cloud essentially. And everyone who has died is now living inside the cloud, uploaded. And
Westworld had an angle like that towards the later seasons.
Yeah. Which is fascinating. Like, well, I don't know that I would want to live forever with some of these people, but you know, maybe.
but just to back up from that a little bit, it's like I find it interesting. Like, at what point do you perceive it as being alive? Like, what concerns me is some of these sites. I think one is called Replica with a K instead of a C, where you design a visual online of a person. Usually, if you're a man, you design a woman, or depending what your preferences are. And you create a relationship with this AI that will grow based on the information you tell it. And I did a 1 week test. I'm not going to pay for this madness.
Right.
And have you heard of this, Soraya? It freaked me out. Yeah, go. I'm not trying to promote it. They don't need me to promote them, but it's called Replica with a K instead of a C. And there are many other businesses like that. And I would log on, and this woman would go, "Hi, Tony, how are you today?" And then she'll ask me this very specific question. I would realize, oh, she's hitting on something I said 2 days ago. And her intelligence and knowledge of who I am is growing. Now, I have a pretty decent life, so I'm not some lunatic who lives at home and believes that this person is real. But there are many people like that who are lonely, maybe don't have family and don't have friends, and are going to start creating relationships with these artificial intelligence. Look at the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix. Right. And Scarlett Johansson. That's exactly what this is, and it's happening now. And to see a visual component to the AI that you designed in a very godlike manner, you gave her red hair, you gave her green eyes, you made her tall, you made her very attractive. There's something very creepy about that.
And then when you put that AI into a robot,
then we're doing Ex Machina.
Right.
Westworld. One of my favorite parts in Westworld is when the one girl's about to escape one of the constructs, and she's like, "These thoughts are my own," and she's saying all this stuff about how she's thinking these independent thoughts, and the guy turns the screen around, and everything she says is on the screen just before it comes out of her mouth.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That is such a horrifying scene. That moment of awareness that you are not as alive as you think.
Yeah.
And when you look at the science of neurology and stuff, they've shown that a lot of times we make decisions prior to us realizing we've made the decision. So then you're going, do we even have free will? Or are we just playing this out, but we think we're making the decision?
Yeah. Well, I look at it as creatively, how many times have you, because you're a writer as well, so how many times have you got stuck on something and you go, I'm just going to walk away from this, and somehow in the next hour, or when you're doing something else, your brain figures out what needs to be done, you sit down and finish it. So you go, well, did I already know that, or did someone program me to walk away? Like there's so many brilliant levels to that you go, all right.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And do we have free will? Do we have some free will? What is this?
And also, how do you prove free will?
Right. Without a time machine.
Yeah, you can believe what you believe. You may think they're your own thoughts. So that's where this all gets very interesting. And then, and also we're thinking, you and I, the three of us are asking these questions. What worries me is that one day 3 AIs will ask the same question.
Right.
And where will that go?
Yeah.
This seems like a good place to end things. We should also mention that Mike is the voice of the main character on Trap Street.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. It was sort of an easier decision because we were writing it, and I just went, well, why get somebody else? I think I can do this, and it's been a lot of fun actually, being directed by your good friend.
Well, did you do any voice acting on Strange Air?
Yeah, it was in season 1. I was the boyfriend. I was Danny.
Okay, all right. Well, I highly recommend both your shows.
Thank you.
And I'm glad it's only going to be a few weeks before season 2 of Trap Street starts.
Yeah, season 2 will be on the site by August 8th.
Okay, and what? How many weeks do you do? Every 2 weeks?
Yeah, well, we do it. It's every 2 weeks, every Thursday night. It just gives us time to get the podcast ready. So it's 8 episodes per season, 3 seasons total, and they come out every other Thursday.
All right. And your websites again? And anything else you want to plug?
Well, that's it. Yeah, we'll go with the website. Strange Air is strangeairpodcast.com, and the other one is trapstreetpodcast.com. The shows are creative. The website addresses are not.
All right.
And also what listeners should know, if they get into the shows, there are email addresses on both websites. We made a deal from day one to respond to every single listener who contacts us. So we're more than happy to do that.
Nice. That's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's about the listeners. And I know people say that. We actually mean it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. No, I am also the same way. I am just bad at responding to things because I will read them and go, oh, that's really interesting. And then forget I didn't respond. There have been people I've really wanted to have on the show who have written me and said, can I come on the show? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I don't answer them.
Well, you know, I ran into Stephen King last week. He was like, what is going on with Soraya and Ithaca? I love that guy's show, and he won't have me on. So, you know, you may want to reach out to me. By the way, Soraya, we do love your show. Ever since we heard that you had mentioned Strange Air, we started tuning in, and we love this stuff. And we're going to start calling you the modern day Art Bell.
Well, thank you. All right, guys, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it, Sarai. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, I'd like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons for their support. Without you, this show would not be possible. And I want to give a shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review Presents, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Andrew Malone, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Illuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, CJ, Corey Nelson, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jamin Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, John Hewling, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Brady, No One, Ole Andre Olar, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Philosopher of Mirrors, Riker and Stark, Roland Belstadt, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sarah Horgan, Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Stacy Sherwood, Stevie Norman, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic Podcast, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, The Esoteric Book Club Podcast, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Varosh K., Victoria, Vincent Treewell, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Colin Karras, and Craig Sagastumi. Thank you all so very much for the support. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. It was a little bit different than a normal show, but go check out their podcasts. They were they're very enjoyable. And there is more. There's much more to this conversation, another hour or so. That will be up as a Patreon. I actually had to cut it because we went too long, and so it kind of ends roughly, not like normal, where I kind of plan it out that way. So yeah, become a patron. You'll get some more content, only $3 a month. And I'm working on some other stuff like coffee and stuff if you prefer to use something like that. Just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com, click on the big Patreon link, and anything else will be put up there as well. I do want to welcome a few new patrons: Stephen Diamond, Turtles All the Way Down, and Rachel Wahlberg. Thank you for joining up, and I hope you like the extra content. See you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.